She was blind, but somehow she could see what no one else could. That morning, the traveling fair had just begun to wake. The scent of sawdust mixed with cotton candy, and fiddles hummed their first hesitant notes across the dirt paths of Espera. For most, it was just another summer day. But for Clementine Shaw, it would become the day that changed everything. She was only 12 years old, and she'd never seen the world, not in color, not in shape. Blind since birth, Clementine moved through life guided by the voice of her father, Boone Delaney, and the whispers of sound and touch that made up her own quiet understanding of the world. 2 years had passed since the fever took her mother, Sarah, and left their home hollow. Boone had done what he could, kept the ranch running, kept the house warm, and kept Clementine safe. But safety couldn't replace a mother, and laughter never fully returned to their doorstep. Not until the fair. Boone held his daughter's hand as they walked between the tents. He described the world the way she liked, with color, with wonder, with hope. The pie vendor juggling 3 red apples, the ribbon seller in a fluttering blue dress, the music drifting from a fiddle near the candy stand. Clementine smiled, and Boone felt his heart ache with a mixture of joy and longing. It had been too long since she smiled like that. Then she stopped. Head tilted, Clementine turned toward something unseen. Her hand tightened in his. "There's a sound," she said. "It's slow, deep, like breathing, but different." Boone listened, and there it was, a rhythmic snort, the creak of leather, the shuffle of hooves. A horse show, it seemed, but there was something else, a weight in the air, a silence behind the noise. They followed it. Near the edge of the fairground was a small ring. People had gathered quietly around it. Inside, a chestnut mare stood motionless, a black cloth tied around her eyes. Her name, they learned, was Luna. The trainer, a boy no older than 20, moved around her like a shadow. No reins, no commands, just presence. A woman with silver hair addressed the crowd. Her voice was calm, but it held the kind of weight that made people listen. Her name was Magnolia Voss. "She's been grieving," Magnolia said. "Luna lost her foal 3 weeks ago. Since then, she's refused all human contact. Until now." Clementine stepped forward and laid her hands on the fence. She said nothing, simply listened. "She's hiding," Clementine whispered. "Not just blindfolded. She's hiding from everything." Magnolia turned toward the child. Her eyes narrowed with curiosity, then softened. "Sometimes," she said, "when we cannot see with our eyes, we must learn to see with our hearts." Dearie, Clementine leaned closer to the fence. "I want to touch her." Boone started to object, but Magnolia placed a hand on his arm. "Let her." The trainer, Tobias, guided Luna to the fence. She came reluctantly, head low, breathing heavy. But as she neared Clementine, something shifted. The air grew still. Clementine reached through the rails, her fingers trembling only once before settling on the mare's warm neck. Luna froze. So did Clementine. And then the girl gasped, sharp, soft, like someone finding air after being underwater for too long. Her face changed. A wave of recognition washed over her, and tears sprang to her eyes. "Mama," she whispered, "you're here." Boone's heart stopped. He took a step forward, uncertain whether to stop her or pull her away. But Clementine was no longer with him. Her hands rested on Luna, her head bowed slightly, her breathing in perfect rhythm with the mare. The world around them, the crowd, the music, even the wind, faded. They were two souls communing in silence. Then Clementine spoke again. She says she's sorry. Mama, she didn't want to leave. She tried to stay, but her body, it wouldn't let her. Boone clenched the fence. His knuckles turned white. He had never told Clementine how much Sarah had fought, how she'd begged to hold on. And yet, she says she still watches over us, Clementine continued. She found a way. She found Luna. The mare pressed her head into Clementine's shoulder. It was a gesture so tender, so heartbreakingly familiar, that the crowd hushed further. Magnolia whispered, almost to herself, I've never seen anything like this. Tori, Tobias stepped closer. She's been dying of grief. Refused food, refused light. We thought we'd have to put her down. But now, Clementine turned toward the sound of her father's breath. She wants to see, she said. She's ready. Tobias reached for the blindfold. But then, voices shouted. Heavy boots stomped toward the ring. A man with a sheriff's badge pushed through the crowd. Behind him, the town mayor, the reverend, and the doctor who treated Sarah. That horse is cursed, the sheriff growled. This ends now. Clementine didn't move. She kept her hands on Luna, calm, steady, and the mare, in turn, stayed still. They're scared, Clementine said softly. They don't understand. Doctor, Matthews stepped forward. The child is disturbed. Her mother's death has warped her mind. This is dangerous, delusional. But Clementine lifted her chin. Dr. Matthews, she said, you were there that night. You told Mama she was getting better, but you lied. Gasps echoed. You knew she was dying, but you didn't want her to panic. She knew anyway. She spent her last hours writing something she hid. Boone's breath caught. Where? He asked. Clementine pointed, still touching Luna. In your bedroom, the loose floorboard under the window, wrapped in her blue silk scarf. The sheriff sneered. Anyone could have found that out. A coincidence. No one else knew, Boone said. His voice was quiet, cold. Not even me. Tension crackled in the air. Then a boy came running from town, his face red, voice breathless. Sheriff, there's been a break-in at the Delaney Ranch. Someone tore apart the bedroom, like they were looking for something. All eyes turned to Dr. Matthews. The color drained from his face. Boone, Clementine, and Tobias rode hard for the ranch. Luna came too, led carefully but willingly. Sheriff Caldwell followed behind, his doubts shaken but not silenced. At the ranch, they found destruction, drawers yanked open, furniture overturned, floorboards splintered, but not the one under the window. Boone knelt and lifted it. And there, wrapped in blue silk, was a letter. Sarah's voice echoed from the page. She knew. She suspected Matthews had been giving her medication that made her worse, not better. She didn't understand why, but she wrote everything down, every dose, every reaction. And she hid the records. In Luna's saddlebag. They checked. The pouch was there. Inside, vials, notes, proof. Matthews returned with 3 hired men pretending to be marshals. He shouted lies, threats, but it was too late. The truth had arrived first. Luna broke free from her reins, blindfold still on, and charged. Not wildly, not violently, purposefully. She drove Matthews back, pinned him against the barn. Clementine stood at her side. "She remembers," she said. "Everything." The sheriff arrested Matthews. The imposters surrendered. The scandal that followed swept through the region. 17 families had been affected. Sarah was not the first, but she was the last. Because she had found a way to speak. Through the heart of a faithful horse. Luna stayed with the Delaney's. Her blindfold was never needed again. At dusk, Clementine would ride her down to Miller's Creek, where Sarah used to walk alone. And sometimes, as the wind turned cool and the sky shifted to rose, Boone swore he could feel his wife nearby, Dorlau, watching, loving. And finally, at peace.